Let's pray. Dear Lord, thank you for this day. Thank you for the blessings you bestowed upon each one of us in this club. And I just pray that as we wind down the school year, you'll continue to watch over us, our kids, our teachers, administrators, let them finish the year strong. Pray that you'll continue to watch over and bless our first responders, those that are home and abroad, that are protecting us each and every day. Thank you for the opportunity that we have in the next several weeks to honor some teachers, some students, and thankful that we can make a difference in their lives. Just pray that you'll continue to guide and direct us. Please bless us food and nourish our lives. We pray. Amen. Join the pledge. Pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, be seated. Any guests this morning? I think I saw it. Very good. Let's see. So on with announcements. Mr. Threadgill.
I tried to fix it.
Oh, yes. Early voting has already started. On the ballot, there's two state constitutional amendments that they're asking you to approve, both of which deal with property taxes. The first one will give a certain amount of exemptions, or continue a certain amount of exemptions for the over 65. The other one will actually increase the homestead exemption for any of you that have a homestead from $25,000 to $40,000 a year. So I would urge you to vote yes on both of those. That won't amount to a whole lot of money, maybe $150 a year, depending on where you live. But your money's to try to keep. Also, the Richardson ISD School Board is having an election. As you well know, we had a forum here a couple of weeks ago. And the other one is Dallas County Community College District. Hardly it's not that anymore. It's now called Dallas College. They're also electing members of their board of directors. So we look on that. There's some links that I was in your newsletter this week that you get an idea of that. Voting, the closest place here is the Aldine Branch Library. Early voting runs through Monday, and then the election day itself is May 7th, Saturday week. I'd also point out, this is part of the election, the city of Dallas is redistricting, for those of you who don't know that. They do just like the state legislature, every so often they have to redistrict. This year they allowed anybody that wanted to send them a map, redrawing the districts. And some of them were pretty bizarre. I want you to know, some of them carved District 10, Lake Island, up into 3 different districts. So far, it didn't make it to the finals, so we're hoping. We look pretty cogent right now. I think we're going to be kept together pretty well. I think it's probably due to Robert's father, because he's on the committee, and that's helped us keep Region 10 like it, or District 10 like it. But if you just Google City of Dallas and look for redistricting, there's 2 maps that have been made the finals, both of which keep District 10 pretty well like it was. Just for interesting, John looked it up. Now, you don't get to vote on that. That's something the council will vote on, but you can make your decision known to them that you've got better ideas, okay? So thank you, and once again, vote early and vote often.
Yeah, so it is, very important election. So do educate yourself, get out there and vote. Let's see. Okay, so May is shaping up to be a very busy month as always. So a couple things that we're going to talk about. If you want KC breakfast, May is not the month for you. So May 6th, which is next Friday, we will be at the high school, Lake Highlands High School. Once again, Lake Highlands High School next week for Teacher of the Year, Youth of the Year, ACE Awards will be next Friday. The following Friday, the 13th, we will be at Lake Highlands United Methodist Church for the scholarship breakfast. Okay, so put that on your calendar. We'll need next week will be a Thursday, so we're talking May 19th. We'll be here that evening for our auction preview. Okay, and then lastly, the 27th is the Friday of Memorial Day weekend, and we have decided not to meet, being that it's the last day of school, Memorial Day weekend. So no meeting on the 27th. Okay, and that'll all be in the newsletter. So please read it. It's in there. Speaking of the 19th, which is the auction preview, spring benefit concert. before I plug that event, some of you might have seen, but our leader of our spring benefit concert was awarded the Assistant Principal of the Year last night. So if you see Joe, please congratulate him. I say last night, maybe it was the night before. No, I think it was last night. So if you see Joe, congratulate him on that achievement. And so speaking of spring benefit concert, silent and live auction are shaping up very nicely. What we really need is ticket sales to increase very quickly. I know probably the majority of this room are going, but we also need you to buy a ticket. It makes us sleep a little better at night knowing that people have bought tickets. So we're a little short on the ticket front. So whether it's you or your neighbors, friends, whoever, please encourage them to jump online, buy tickets, come to the event. Once again, the event is Saturday the 21st. So please encourage yourselves and then your friends to come buy tickets. One of the main components of this is it's not really a club-only event. We're really trying to make this a community event. So those outside the club are highly encouraged to attend. It will be a great time, 8 o'clock at Gillies. So grab your friends, go eat dinner before, show up at Gillies at 8. Will be a great time. So once again, if you see social media posts, if you see anything online, email, whatever, forward it, share it, like it, all those things that we do to get people out to the event on the 21st. So, I think that is our calendar rundown for the moment. Any other announcements I forgot? All right, seeing none, I will invite Mr. Boyd up for the program this morning.
Yeah, I need a little bit more coffee this morning. Come on. All right, appreciate it. So our speaker this morning is Andy Luten. Andy's a buddy of mine. He has a very generic job title of Vice President of Client Relations at S&P, which I still have no idea what that means. But I do know that he gets to help his HR department shape new policy, like work from home does not actually extend to an Airbnb in far northwest Iceland for an extended period of time. But Andy, in his spare time, is a travel blogger, photographer, space enthusiast, Tesla early adopter, and he's got a blog out there that documents interesting places, cool things. One of the my favorite post that he had was at the early days of the pandemic. He actually did a helicopter tour at a number of airports where there were the huge parking lots of airplanes out there, taking pictures from the sky and seeing them. He loves Iceland and waterfalls, so kindred spirit there. Speaking of Spirit, he actually survived his very first Spirit Airlines flight 2 weeks ago. I'm glad that went well. After being on Singapore Air, it was probably a bit of a change. But so Andy's going to come and talk to us today about a volcano. So Andy Luten.
Thank you, Bill. If you cannot hear me, please raise your hand as high as you can. Okay, I always say that joke when I start because it doesn't make any sense. Thank you for having me. And I want to start off with a little bit of vocabulary lesson. I want to teach you a new language, okay? So we're going to do some Icelandic vocabulary. That's how all great speeches start, is Icelandic vocabulary, okay? So you need to repeat after me. Foss. Foss. Excellent. You all speak Icelandic now, okay? So foss means falls or waterfall, okay? Now repeat after me. God. God. Okay, God in Icelandic, well, it means God. So you now know 2 words in Icelandic, God and foss. So let's go back to like the late 10th century, okay? So also how good speeches start, talking about 10th century history. Iceland was the last Nordic country to become Christianized. And when the king of Iceland decided to go ahead and convert to Christianity, he made this grand gesture of going out to this very culturally significant waterfall. Because waterfalls are very significant to Iceland, because if you ever find yourself in Iceland, it's like the rule of the country that you can be no further than 28 feet from a waterfall, which is fine because they're literally all over the place. So he goes to the most significant waterfall in Iceland, and he casts all of his Old Norse, like, mythology or theology, all those relics. So you had like Odin and Thor and Captain America and Iron Man. He cast all of those relics into these waterfalls and accepted Christianity. And so they call that waterfall, to this very day, they call it Godafoss, or Waterfall of the Gods. And so last March, I found myself at Godafoss. And I've tried to go to Godafoss a couple times before, and as Bill can tell you, the waterfalls in Iceland get pretty popular. And really because they say the Americans come and ruin it for everybody. And we do. We're a unique brand of tourist. The best. That's what I meant by unique brand of tourist. So there's three parking lots around Godafoss. They're big parking lots, especially like Iceland. And every time I try to go there, they've been full of cars. It's like so full that I can't even go there. And it's not really close to most other things in Iceland, so it felt like a wasted trip. Well, last March, I was the first American they allowed back in once they allowed vaccinated travelers. And it was hilarious because I was the first one off the plane, and I went up to the guy in customs, and I've been through Iceland quite a few times before, so I knew the drill. And the guy goes, okay, so I need to see your vaccination card, and you do not have like a QR code or anything, right? It's just a paper. And I said, yeah, and I handed it to him, and he looked at it and he said, are you serious? This is your vaccination, it's handwritten. I was like, yeah. And I said, oh, this is gonna be fun. So, but he still let me into the country, and I was up in North Iceland, which is where Godafoss is, and I drove by it, and I didn't see a single car in the parking lot. I was like, oh man, I literally have this huge waterfall to myself. So took out my camera and just kind of sat there, and as day turned into night, and night turned into the stars coming out, I reminded myself, or I was reminded that, you know, this is a culturally significant place. And then it was almost as if Iceland welcomed me with open arms, because very gradually I saw there was a cloud, and then I saw what looked like other clouds starting to shoot out of it, and then I realized, okay, this is March. March is the beginning of Northern Lights season in Iceland, or really most of the world. And if this works, this is supposed to be a dramatic timing here. We'll just do this way. All right, we won't do it this way. So imagine how cool that would have been with the timing that, anyways. Yeah, I'm waiting for the bagels to be thrown. So anyway, so this is Godafoss down here at the bottom, and you know, upstairs, that's the Northern Lights. And the Northern Lights are absolutely incredible. If you ever get to see them, count yourself lucky. It's never guaranteed, even in Iceland. Iceland's a great spot to look for them, but Iceland also sits right below the jet stream, so it's usually cloudy, and the weather can change in 5 seconds there. This is not the cool part of the story, though. So the cool part of the story is, while I was literally taking that picture, this was a 20-second picture that I took with a Sony camera, in the middle of that, I got about 20 text messages. Normally when you get 20 text messages, either you forgot to call your mom or your wife, or like something terrible happened. And I looked down and I got 20 text messages from a bunch of different people. And they all said the same thing. It said, Andy, the volcano just erupted in Iceland. The airspace is closed. And I thought, did I just get stuck in Iceland? Is this the best day of my life? I was so excited. And it turns out that the volcano that erupted, it was very docile. They were worried it was going to be catastrophic, which would have been terrible because it was over by Reykjavik. And for those of you who don't know Iceland has about 300,000 people on the island, and about 250,000 of them are in and around Reykjavik, the capital area. And the volcano was not far from there, so they were worried we'd have another Pompeii-Vesuvius situation. So I was sitting there and I was like, man, I already got Northern Lights, a volcano erupted, I'm stuck here forever. It's not a bad way to start a trip. So I went back, I was staying in the town on the north coast of Iceland called Akureyri, and I stayed there that night, and I woke up to a Facebook message from a guy named Peter. Peter's an Icelandic guy that I know from a Facebook group for people who use Fuji cameras. I use Sony and Fuji cameras. And Peter said, Andy, me and some friends found a monster truck, and we're going to drive out to the volcano. Do you want to come? And so I was thinking, like, okay, I don't know Peter. Like, I know his name, and I know that he lives in Iceland, and that's it. But I was thinking, like, Peter knows that I have a very expensive, I have a $6,000 camera with me, and like 3 lenses that go for a few $1,000s a piece. There's a monster truck. I don't know who's driving it, and I don't know if it's safe. based on trucks around here. Who knows how it was built? And going towards an erupting volcano, I was sitting there and I was like, there's a lot of reasons to say no to this. So I replied, I said, now Peter, you had me at monster truck. So I went to the monster truck, and it was so accurately titled, and I pulled up to, or I drove into Reykjavik, and I met up with Peter, and it turns out he's a great guy, like he's a great friend now. And we went to the garage where this monster truck was kept, and it took me right back to high school, because I walk in, it is a 2004 Dodge Ram with like Allison transmission, diesel engine, like a 14-inch lift, 40-inch tires. It was awesome, and you can probably see a similar truck at like 3 a.m. when you're trying to sleep. If you can hear it, that's probably that same truck. And so we go out to the volcano, and it was incredible. And for the Icelandics, it was like the first time they could go out and be free again, because it was outdoors. So it was like a festival atmosphere. There were like people that brought coolers full of beers, they brought their pets. There were, I'm not making this up, there were 2 people being intimate over on one side of the thing. Everybody was like, okay. And meanwhile, we're just watching this volcano. When you're watching a volcano, you're literally watching new parts of Earth, you know, coming down from the volcano. And if you're stupid and you get too close, then you can become part of that new Earth and the newest parts of Iceland. And so the Icelandic approach to public safety, just so you're very aware here, they want to give you all the information you need to make a great decision. And what you choose to do with that information, that's your decision. So there were gentlemen walking around in like full protective gear, and they had these like gas-o-meters, it's probably the scientific term for it, and they were measuring sulfur dioxide, carbon dioxide levels, because that's what comes out of a volcano. And fortunately in Iceland it's almost always windy, so the wind was blowing away the gas. It was still okay for people to be there. So I walked up to the guys, and they were about 40 feet back, or some meters version. They were pretty far back from where the lava was, and I asked one of the guys, I said, hey, is it okay to go past you? And he looked at me and he said, you're wearing jeans. I'm wearing full protective gear and a respirator, and I have like a gas meter with me. You have a camera. If you want, go ahead. He said, we're not gonna get you if you fall in. I said, okay. What does that guy know? So I just walked right up to the lava flow and was sitting there. I was like, man, it's quite hot. And then I realized I couldn't breathe really well afterwards. But I mean, let's see here. The picture, man, that was worth it. So you notice all those new parts of Iceland coming out right there. And if you look down here at the bottom, this is the rock, and this is the lava that's becoming the new parts of the rock. And so that was amazing to me. And as I was coming back, and as I went through the rest of my trip to Iceland and almost got fired because I wasn't supposed to be there or working from there permanently, and I didn't tell everybody the full story about where I was. It's a much longer story, and I don't want to get into it, especially because it's being recorded. As I went through the rest of my trip, I kept thinking about that, like, what if I had listened to my doubts? What if I had listened to every reason I had to say no to go out to an erupting volcano in a monster truck with people I didn't really know? It was Peter, and then it was like his buddy Christian, and then his other buddy, Christian. I was like, oh, it's the Christians. And to this day, like, I'm friends with both of them on Facebook, but I have no idea which one is which, because the rest of their letters is like somebody typed ASDF, ASDF on a keyboard. No idea which one I've been talking to when they messaged me. But I would have never seen this. I never would have been, well, coughing for the next 2 weeks after I inhaled all that vapor, but man, what if I would have said no? What if I would have been paralyzed by my doubts? And not informed by my doubts, but made a fun decision anyway. And that's when I just started thinking about this concept of you know, give yes a chance. And that's what this volcano taught me, was, you know, give yes a chance sometimes. Like, it's okay to be informed by your doubts, just as long as you're not crippled by them. And so I came back home and I started putting these lessons to work, and there was a girl, her name's Liz, and Liz and I had followed each other on Instagram, which is how true romance starts these days, apparently. I don't know. And she traveled and I traveled. She was attractive. If I'm out of focus, I'm the same. And we both were defined, but we had a lot in common. So we wanted to meet up and wanted to see if there's anything there. She's in Fort Worth. I'm not caught in Lake Highlands. I'm just over on the other side of the wall, at like Meadow and 75, but like in Preston Hollow area. We say Preston Hollow because I live in the condos, like on the outskirts outskirts of it, but if we say Preston Hollow, it makes it sound more impressive. Just being honest, all of you probably heard this. Okay, so Liz and I were talking about meeting up sometime, see if there's anything romantic there, and she's busy, I was busy, and I finally just, actually before I continue, does anybody here have an iPhone? Oh, okay, sorry. Does anybody here not have an iPhone? Hands high. Who does not have an iPhone here? Everybody has an iPhone here? Okay, good, because if any of you do not have an iPhone, I was going to tell you to stop ruining our group texts. And actually, on that note, this is not part of the speech, but on that note, does anybody know who Jason Kidd is? Jason Kidd, head coach of the division champion, Dallas Mavs, or the playoff advancing Dallas Mavericks. Do y'all know what Jason Kidd is most famous for? Not winning a world championship or anything like that. It's when he was coach of the Bucks in 2014, he once made a player run extra laps because they had an Android phone and they were ruining their group text. And that's when I became a Jason Kidd fan. I read that article and I was like, oh, man, I'm with you. And I know nobody here has probably been through this, but you probably know somebody who has. Have you ever had that time where you send a text to somebody and then you reread it and you're like, oh, maybe I shouldn't have done that. And then you see those 3 dots pop up and you know they're typing. And you watch and you're like, oh, they're typing a lot. But then the 3 dots stop and they don't send something. And you're like, oh no, they're backspacing. And then you see the dots and you're like, they're writing a second draft. Like, I'm in danger. And it goes on for quite a while. And then they just write, okay. You're gonna get it, that's what that means. So I was talking to Liz and we were still trying to work things out timing-wise, if you'll remember. And I sent her a text, I said, listen, we just need to make an occasion of this or else we're never gonna meet. She said, well, what did you have in mind? I just said, do you want to go to Iceland next weekend? And I saw those 3 dots for quite a while and I just thought, well, this is how a restraining order happens. She had a lot of reasons to say no. She had a lot of reasons to have doubts. I had a lot of reasons to not send that message. But she just said, yeah, I just need to figure out what to do with my dog. I'm in. So the next weekend, we went to Iceland for 4 days. And the first time we ever met in person was a side hug in front of Terminal C at DFW Airport. So again, she had a lot of reasons to say no, but she chose to say yes. She chose to go on an adventure. She chose to take a bit of a risk, and we had a blast. And I know everybody is looking at my left hand to see if there's a wedding ring or this is the perfect story. Oh, and then they got engaged, and that's going to be the next picture. No, it's not. We had a great time, but it didn't work out romantically, and that's fine. Listen, when you say yes, it doesn't always mean it's going to work out the way you want it to work out, okay? It can still fail. But man, it was a cool adventure along the way. And for those of you who don't know Iceland, this is the Jökulsárlón Iceberg Lagoon, or Glacial Lagoon, where actual bits of real glacier break off, and you just watch them go by. And then there's seals, not the Navy variety, but the animal variety, just kind of hanging out. And then the glaciers, or these icebergs, they float out into the ocean, and then they get slammed back into the beach, and they become shattered, and they call that Diamond Beach, because you can see all these iceberg fragments. It's incredible. What if she had said no? We would have never had this cool experience. And again, that goes back to what the volcano taught me. Sometimes it's okay to say yes to stuff like this. And by the way, since we both work in finance, it is quite fun having a bit more resources when you travel with somebody who you know is not doing terrible for themselves and you're not doing terrible for yourself, because we took a helicopter out to the volcano this time instead of the monster truck, and it grew. So, for comparison, this is where I was standing when I took that picture in March. 2 months later, I would have been under about 40 feet of New Iceland. That's pretty crazy, right? And what I'll do here is I'll take you through a quick story, and then what I'll do is I'll give you kind of 5 minutes on what I see travel looking like for the rest of this summer, the next travel period, because it's going to be interesting. And then I can open up for any questions you have. Obviously, this is about what I learned from the volcano, and Bill talked about it a little bit. I want to walk you through the story. So when the pandemic happened, I was on my way to Nashville. I was at DFW Airport, and I was going to see a client in Tennessee, and I loved this client in Tennessee because there was like good old country boy from Tennessee, but it was like highfalutin finance. So it was great talking about what's this accrued income looking like? And you're like, it's not an accent I'm used to hearing. I'm used to hearing, and that's a terrible Tennessee accent, by the way. I'm used to hearing like New Yorkers talking about this stuff, and this guy called me and goes, Andy, you on that plane yet? I said, no, sir, I'm not. He goes, don't get on that plane. We don't know what's coming down here from China, but we're not accepting visitors anymore. I said, okay. So I canceled my flight and said, you can come to Nashville if you want, give you some good recommendations down on Broadway, but you ain't seeing us. And so went home, and I did what any responsible person would have done. I bought Peloton stock and bought a Peloton bike. That's not really part of the story, this is what happened. So we didn't really know what to do as a company, and I'm sure many of you were in that same spot, like, what do we actually do? We can't do anything, we can't see each other. Everybody's terrified. I called my boss and I was like, hey, what do you want me to be working on? He was like, Andy, there's nothing to do. Like, nobody knows what's going on with this thing. And so I don't like sitting around very well. And I started seeing pictures of airplanes that were grounded. And airplanes are actually, they're not meant to be on the ground, they're meant to be in the air. It's actually very bad for an airplane if it sits on the ground for too long. So when American Airlines started parking their jets in Pittsburgh, I just thought that's serious that American would actually do that and do it in a visible location. Because airlines want to hide that. They don't want to show that they're struggling. It's very bad for investors. It's bad for public confidence in air travel. So I saw the footage of these planes in Pittsburgh, and I was like, man, nobody's making it beautiful. Like it's sad, but it was symmetrical, and I thought there was beauty there. And so I reached out. I had a contact at Pittsburgh Airport, and I said, hey, can you get me on the tarmac so I can take pictures of those? And she said, no, we can't, because American would get mad at us. So I reached out to a contact at American who verified, yes, they would get very mad at Pittsburgh if they did that, and they did not want any part of those pictures. They didn't want me to document their apocalypse. I thought, okay, well, this will be really expensive for me, and whoever's car is getting stolen right now. I timed that. That was with this remote. There was a button I didn't know. So I thought, okay, how do I get pictures of something if the airline doesn't want me to take pictures of it, the airport doesn't want me to take pictures of it? Well, they don't control the air. Air traffic control controls the air. And most air traffic control people, they couldn't care less why I want to fly over there. They'll give me access. So I went for a little test run, and Spirit Airlines had parked some jets at Alliance Airport in Fort Worth. So I chartered a helicopter from Epic Helicopters, and I went over Alliance Airport in Fort Worth. And I took these pictures of Spirit, and here's the thing, like, very few people feel bad for Spirit, okay? Because there's people who have flown Spirit, and there's a much smaller population of people who have flown Spirit again. So I took these pictures, and I was shocked at how impactful this was. I mean, not the quality of the picture. Like, I know this is a good picture, it's good symmetry and all that. But when I looked at this, when I looked at that plane, I saw a friend of mine who was a flight attendant. She was worried about keeping her job. I saw my buddy Will, who at age 35 moved from Oklahoma to Dallas to pursue his dream of becoming a pilot. Didn't take a day off for 2.5 years. Finally earned his right seat slot at American Eagle 6 months before the pandemic. He didn't know if he had a job. So when I looked at this, I saw Will. I saw his wife Liz as an American flight attendant. I saw the flight crews who lined this up so precisely when they didn't know if they'd have a job the next day. And I thought to myself, very similar to Joe Exotic and Tiger King, I thought this is going to financially ruin me, but I need to go find other planes that are parked like this, and I need to tell their story. So I went around to different places in the southern United States. I went to Tulsa, which is where American Airlines has it's the largest airline maintenance facility in the world. It's in Tulsa, Oklahoma. And if you look down here, don't look at the jets. Look down here. Look at the skid marks. Those are the runways where planes are normally landing. They have become parking lots. I flew over that, and I fly American. Listen, I'm in Dallas. You can fly any airline you want as long as it's American or Southwest. So I fly American a lot. I've probably been on one of those planes, and the crazy part is, these are international jets, and they were relegated to the same fate as the 737 Maxes that were sitting next to them. And so I did, Fort Worth. I did Tulsa, and then I started thinking, like, Andy, what's your goal in this? Are you going to make money from this? Like, there's a lot of reasons to stop here because this could get really expensive. chartering a helicopter, just so everybody knows, is eye-wateringly expensive. But I knew I needed to tell a story. I knew I needed to try to make images like this to illustrate what was going on. After Tulsa, American didn't really have a choice. They were running out of airports, so they had to start parking jets at DFW Airport. So this is DFW, and this was so sad for me. The American they didn't have any other choice. They had to park their own jets at their home airport. And it just got sad. So it wasn't just American and DFW, it was 84 Delta jets here in Kansas City. And then I went down to Houston, saw a bunch of United jets at Intercontinental. The thing that really got to me, and this is the reason I'm so glad I said yes, was I was going out to Tucson, Arizona. There's, Tucson, they have that huge military boneyard out there. They also have a couple of civilian jet boneyards out there. And they call them boneyards because they're out in the desert, very low moisture. The airplanes aren't going to rust out or anything like that. So that's where they like to store a lot of jets. And I had heard something that sounded very peculiar, and they said, one of the bigger boneyards is full. It's like, how is a desert full? Well, that's how a desert is full of airplanes. So we had Air Canada flew some jets down because they wanted to get them out of the Canadian climate. They had Delta flew down some 747s, some 767s. The one that meant the most to me, though, was JetBlue. So when I published this post, I put everything together, I published this post, and I had to tell myself, it doesn't matter how this post does on my blog. And a lot of bloggers will rank their post on like how many views it got or whatever, how many comments, what the engagement was. I was talking to my mom the night before it was released. I said, Mom, I am so proud of everything that's in this. I'm so proud of every picture. I'm proud of every word that I wrote because I put my entire soul into it, even though it was a risk. And if nobody reads it, I'm still really proud of it. Well, people started to read it. People started to share it, and then some news agencies reached out and made the Dallas Morning News. But what meant the most to me was a guy who sent me an email. The email subject said, thank you. You open that email. There's other emails you get that you just don't worry about. You open one that says, thank you. It was one of the pilots for JetBlue who landed one of those jets. And he said, I had to take an Uber from that airport to Tucson to hop on a commercial flight home. He said, Andy, I didn't know when I was going to fly again. I still don't know when I'm going to fly again. He said, when people ask me how things are going, you've given me something to show them the scale of this. He said, so I can't thank you enough because you've helped bring things to like a concrete state for me. So when I was saying yes to myself, I knew I needed to complete this project, but it succeeded in a way I never would have imagined. And so that's what I would ask to you this morning as I kind of wind down the motivational speech part of this. What do you need to say yes to this morning? As we wind down the school year, as summer begins, as people go off to Africa, as people go their separate ways, today, the summer, fall, the rest of the year, and especially as we emerge from this pandemic, what do you need to be saying yes to right now? What questions do you need to ask other people where you may not know the answer, you may be nervous about it, you may get those 3 dots on the text message. What do you need to ask people? And then one of the great things about saying yes to stuff is it may succeed in a different way. You may end up helping somebody in a way you never would have forecasted. So I would encourage each one of you, as you go about your day, to at the end of it, jump in that monster truck and let's go find some volcanoes, all right? So thank you all very much for having me. Again, my name's Andy Luten. And that wraps up like the speech part of it. I did want to just give you a couple of moments for, as a guy who covers travel, and I have for a long time, and I travel all the time, like Bill said. I flew in Singapore Airlines Suites class a few weeks ago, flying back from Frankfurt, spent a bunch of miles to do it. It was fantastic, Dom Perignon champagne. And then one of my next flights was on Spirit Airlines. The champagne was not nearly as good on that. But I will tell you this about Spirit. They delivered an entirely predictable experience. I had very low expectations, and man, they nailed every single one. But there's something to be said for that, because if you go on other airlines, you're like, this would be a good flight. It's just a terror. And then, with Spirit, you go in, you're like, this is going to be awful. It is. Anyways, so this summer is what I'm calling like the summer of revenge travel. Like, you have all of these people who've been was stuck behind masks, stuck behind people who chose not to get vaccinated, or even people who did get vaccinated, they didn't feel comfortable traveling yet for many reasons. That's okay, it's none of my business. They have been pulling back travel demand like a rubber band or a slingshot, and that thing's about to fire, especially once the mask mandate went away. And this is all happening right about the time that Boeing is being slow to deliver big jets to their airline partners. And then we're running into chip shortages, we're running into supply chain issues and staffing shortages. Here's the thing, with the mask mandate or without it, or without the mask mandate, people are going to get sick, flight crews are going to get sick. When they get sick, they can't fly. So American preemptively reduced their spring schedule by 71,000 flights. Sounds impressive. That's a big number for American, but they fly, tens of thousands of flights a day. Southwest reduced theirs by 65,000 flights. It's nuts. And so, what does that mean for you? What does that mean for us? What does that mean when you need to go find your volcanoes out in Iceland or wherever? Domestic travel is going to be a circus this summer. You're going to be on flights that are more full than they've ever been, and you're going to be paying eye-watering amounts for airline tickets. I flew to Philadelphia this weekend. My Spirit Airlines flight, I'm still certain I did something wrong here, because they're like, well, Spirit Airlines, like, it's not fun, but at least you only paid $11 for your ticket. I paid $380 for a ticket on Spirit Airlines. My return on American on a one-way flight was $540. And that was to Philly. Nobody wants to go to Philly. If you're from Philly, I'm sorry. I'm not sorry, okay? Anyways, so the advice I'm going to give you is if you're booking travel for this summer, book the earliest flights of the day. Don't book the last flights of the day. Because if anything goes wrong, I know everybody thinks like DFW Airport, they think it stands for Dallas-Fort Worth. It actually stands for doesn't function wet. Because whenever it rains, you'll see like an hour of delays per flight. The knock-on effects of those last forever. So get on the earliest flights because they have the biggest incentive to get those flights out, because they need that jet in Denver, and then they need it in San Francisco, and then they need it in LA. They're motivated to get the earlier flights out, and it also gives you more time to find alternate arrangements. Another thing, this is like an elite tip. I don't give this tips out to just any club. This is for Lake Highlands, okay? I say that wherever I'm speaking to make it seem more local. Who here does not have a Twitter account? Okay, nobody's willing to share that they don't have a Twitter account. So apparently y'all are very active on Twitter, which is great. Doesn't matter to me, this is not an Elon Musk thing. I also say that just to bring in news of the day. Every airline, every hotel chain, they have Twitter support. Okay, so you don't need to tweet, you don't need to be interested in politics or anything, but if you direct message American Airlines while you're on hold with them, and they're like, you have an 18-hour callback time. No, go to Twitter. Those Twitter agents can do basically the same thing that the phone agent would be able to do, and they can do it a lot quicker. So all you have to do is set up a Twitter account. You don't need to tweet. You just need to have a name. You direct message American Airlines. You say, hey, this is my AAdvantage number. Please associate this with my account, and they'll be able to help you in the future. You will need to use that this summer because planes will be 98% full the entire summer. If you're looking to save money, travel international. It sounds crazy, but international flights for a lot of destinations are cheaper than domestic flights right now because everybody is traveling this summer. So anyways, those are my rambling thoughts this morning, the result of too much caffeine and the fact that nobody threw a bagel at me to tell me to shut up. So again, my name's Andy Luten. Thank you all so much for having me, and have a great day.
Yes, Andy, thank you very much. Great photos and great message as well. I mean, what do you need to say yes to? Buying tickets. So if you're motivated this morning after that, remember the 21st, there's a spring benefit concert that is our fundraiser. So say yes and buy some tickets. So with that, just a reminder, next week, we are at the high school for Teacher of the Year, Youth of the Year, ACE Awards, followed by our scholarship at the College United Methodist Church. Yes, sir, question?
I haven't been to the high school since it's new.
Yes.
Where do we go now?
We will be in the hub called the cafeteria. The hub, which is the building that connects the two buildings.
It's the old gym entrance.
Okay.
Yeah, basically, act like you're going to the gym.
Okay.
Thank you. Yes, so we will be there next Friday. So, vote
My kids were pre-built.
as well. Get out there and vote. Let your voice be heard. Anything else we missed this morning? All right, thanks again. Great to see everybody. Have a great weekend.